So today, to draw our horse, we are going to have our paper in a landscape format, and just as we've talked about throughout, we need to build a structure underneath. So quadrupeds or four-legged animals have the ribs. Inside the ribs there we've got the foreleg muscle. Next we've got this neck that kind of comes from a little bit further back than there, almost like a 45-degree angle. Once we divide our more complex shapes up into the more simple shapes like squares, circles and triangles, it helps us to understand them better, or more so it helps us not to be intimidated by them, because we know a circle, we know a square and we know a triangle. So we know we can deal with those shapes. So once we've simplified it in these ways, then we know that we're dealing with things that we're comfortable with. So in terms of proportion, I'm going to revisit this back shape. So the next thing we need to consider are the angles of the legs. Now I'm going to start at the back and move forward. The back leg we've got here is coming off at like a 45-degree angle, and here's our joint. Next it's coming down quite straight, and then the horse's hooves pop on the end of that last joint there. So we need to consider what's going to happen under here. With a horse, sometimes they have really quite large tummies, so there's no set way of this working, though. Let's see where his back leg's going to go. Around about the same place for the knee joint, around about the same place for the, what I'm going to call the ankle, and then the hooves go on the end of So, although it looks incredibly strange right now, that is the skeleton or the structure behind our horse. So to complete the structure of our horse, I'm going to work from the back forward. So if we think about the shape, following the guidelines, but more so looking at the reference image, we see that this comes in here. So the rear shaping of the horse comes right around like this, and then dips in the back and lifts again into that powerful shoulder. I'm going to reduce this slightly in line with my reference image. So we've got that nice dip and that curve around the back that we can see. Next we've actually got a joint here which hasn't been drawn in, but we can see it because the back leg is in a shade, but it kind of comes around here, bends around to the knee, the second knee, and we've got this one coming around to the second knee. It's really quite angled here, and then comes down to what we're calling the ankle. So we've got rid of those guidelines. Now we can concentrate on this leg here. So it starts a bit further out. Coming down to the knee. And then it comes in about halfway down this leg, about a third of the way down this leg. Got rather pointed angle there. This is a bit of a bumpy line. Take your time, keep looking at the reference image, and draw it as many times as you need to till it's starting to look okay. So that's a bit longer there, down to this part of the horse. So we've got our ankle here, and then very narrow, and then our hoof. Rub out your guidelines, see if that's looking like your reference image. And that seems to be the shapes of back legs. Now we're going to come to the front legs. So we've got this quite powerful muscle here that we've drawn in. That comes into the leg, and then we come down to this knee joint here. So we know what we're doing now with this. I'm going to go ahead and finish that off. So let's try and address this front bit here. So what we need to do here is to consider how this leads into this neck. Now you can't really see very well on the reference image, but from our knowledge of horses, we know one of their defining features is this lovely big cheek that they have here. And then the front of the horse's head is kind of a rectangular shape. So when it comes around here, it follows down, and then it follows underneath the chest here. So actually the guideline is good for our angle, but the shape is more rounded, a little slight curve there. And then we have a sort of muscle of some sort sticking out the back there, but I can't understand what that is, but I will just draw it in. If I see it, I'll draw it. And then this line is more curved too. This is going to be our mane, and then here is where the mane joins into the body. Okay, so we can rub out all of our guidelines now, nearly all. Add our ears. Okay, so that's our shape without the guidelines. Now, my guidelines don't rub out very well because I do them quite heavily so that you can see them on the camera. Same as my outline, you don't need to do your outline quite so heavily, because lighter touches means we can rub it out, draw it again, and it's better not to leave so many marks as I have. Now let's have a look at the horse's face and just fine tune some of the shaping here. So I've rubbed out the guideline, but I can still see it. And if I'm looking at the reference image, this line here is quite straight. There's a slight raise where the eye is, then a dip, and here at the end it kind of curves round. We have a curve underneath there, and then this angle just comes into the cheek under here. Okay, Unfortunately, the reference image has the bridle on it, so that blocks a lot of the information from the face. So let's draw ours with the bridle on, because we draw what we see, not what we think it should be. So that's fine, and that tucks under there. Okay, and then the eye sits about here. So once we've got the full shape of the horse and we've reflected, we can now start to see where we need to make any changes. Now, one thing I've spotted is the shape of my back goes on a really quite a slope. In actual fact, the reference image doesn't do that, and it comes up here like this. So I'm just going to go and change that. Keep looking at your own image. Where does it not match the reference image? And keep changing it accordingly. So once we're happy with the shape, and I think I am, have a look at yours, see if you're happy with your shape. Now we're going to look at tone and the different tonal values across the horse. Last week we looked at how to create a furry texture using different tones across the fur. However, the horse is much sleeker and smoother. So I'm just going to start off marking out a few areas of shade, lightly to begin with. And then we have quite a dark area here. The lower parts of the legs all seem to be in some sort of shade. So I'm just going to do some rough shading, kind of a mid-tone. And we'll work into that in a minute to create the dark tones. Okay, so let's do a little bit further shading. Now it's really quite hard to see from the image any real description in this leg. It just looks particularly dark. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that back leg to the dark level that it is in the image. So when you have dark areas against light areas, it really sends the dark item, or leg in this case, back into the picture. So we know that's going behind the light area, which is the front. Okay. Here we've got a knee. I'm going to call it a knee. And there's a little bit of shade here, but it's not dark shade, it's a mid-tone. And that is where we've already highlighted areas of shading. So remember to put that onto my side, and it actually comes all the way up here. This area of shade comes around to the knee, like that. So I've just added in a little bit of the dark area again here, which is like really dark as that leg. But at the ankle here we have some description to look a little bit more closely at. So you can see across here we've got a little bit of highlighting here, and then underneath that, from the bobble down, There's almost like a triangle of dark shade. And then the shade here, it comes in different shapes. And I can't really describe what I'm doing other than look at the reference image and draw it in the shapes that you see. But at the end of the day, what we want to describe with our pencil marks is that there's a little bit of highlight here. The horse's ankle has caught a little bit of light on it, and as long as that's the description we get from that, we're doing okay. A little bit of shading underneath there. Then the foot itself seems to catch the light, and a little bit of shade into the hoof. Underneath here we have the area where the large muscle separates into the tummy, so that kind of comes up around here, and this under tummy is the darker area, and then it kind of shows itself in the form of some shading. It's almost like a triangle, so I'm going to draw a triangle in there. Bring that along the length of the body, that shading, and then here it kind of dips. And the same here, where the muscle is joining the body, it creates a darker shade. Some creasing. Areas of dark, a couple of light sections in there, and then the hoof is mid-tone with a dark description around here. Now this is where we can add a little bit of interest to this leg because we have some muscles to describe. Now we've got a shape like that of shadow. Then we have some muscle coming right down to the knee, muscle coming around here, and I think a little suggestion of some muscle under here, but mostly this is kind of shaded. There's a little bit of light around the knee there. And once we've described the areas that are prominent, we can shade them accordingly. This is a complete shadow, so we make that completely dark and everything else in between. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and describe those muscles. now we've set the really dark tone at that level. Anything that is as dark as that we have to match. So this bit that I didn't know what it was, it's quite dark there. We've got this shape coming up here. So just as we've done before, I'm going to go ahead and finish So with the face, we've already drawn our bridle in, so we can make that a bit clearer. Where this bridle is here, it's making some shadow, so we can draw that shadow in too. Let's take a closer look at the ears while we're here. So they come around here, pop in there, and the back one is lighter on top and then darker underneath here. Bit of forelock coming through there, not much to mention, so we just leave that as a suggestion, and we shade that from the bottom up, and this one from this side. The ears cast a shadow a little bit into the bridle, draw that in. And this kind of just disappears underneath the chin. Draw the bridle over the nose, and then we can start describing what the nose is going to look like. And the last little bit is quite in a lot of shadow underneath there. Okay, let's take a look at this shaping here. So it's a little bit longer than I had it. We've got a little bobble on the end coming up here, and the horse's lip extends down. We've got a dark area for the mouth, a little bit of shaping there, it comes out and then back in to that area. Then we have our nostril, which comes round like this, always dark inside a nostril. And then where it comes out up here, we have a little bit of shading into the end of the muzzle or nose. A little bit of shading underneath, into the lips, and lots of shading along this bottom edge. Triangle of shade from the bridle, shading underneath here, and then last but not least, the top area, we have some shading coming along here and around the nostril. So just draw that in. And then the eye shape is quite dark inside, so it's just a suggestion. And then the shade going around where the eye protrudes, got a bit of shadow coming around here. to the side of the eye and underneath the eye, and that sinewy kind of line here. Okay, so we have something like that. And now we can work on the tail and pop in some of the little details. Brush strokes again, back to the old. Use the brush strokes to describe the hair. So there's a couple of things that we've addressed today. One, the quadruped structure, those big rib cages, the rumps and the shoulder muscles, very important. The proportion of the head and the neck to the body, and then all the different angles and directions that the legs go, which are quite different from human legs. The next thing with our shading, we've really looked at creating a stark difference between dark and light, really using block shade to emphasize the kind of dark under area. So the last thing to do is to approach the mane. I am just going to attempt it in the way that it is drawn here, but I'm going to try and make it look a little bit more flowing, as if it's running off into the sunset. So all that's left is for me to say a huge thank you again. Really appreciate you joining the sessions, and of course please share your images with me again. I love to see them. Have a good week. Bye.